How will the transition between Doug Armstrong and Alex Steen go? I'll tell you more about it coming up here on Locked on Blues.
You're Locked On Blues, your daily podcast on the St. Louis Blues. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, and welcome back to Locked On Blues. I'm your host of Locked On Blues, Haley Taylor Simon, talking to you all things about our St. Louis Blues here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today on Locked On Blues, I'm going to be talking about the transition between GMs with Doug Armstrong and Alex Steen. Even though it's a couple years away, still some stuff I want to talk about. Today is, of course, What If Wednesday. And are the Blues going to trade up for that 2024 NHL entry-level draft next weekend, but this coming up week? So a lot to discuss, a lot going on in the NHL. I want to start off by letting you know that today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. I hope everybody is having a good Wednesday. Today is June 19th. And on today's episode of Locked On Blues, I have a couple of really interesting points that I wanted to get into. Obviously, yes, you're right. Perunovich had that extension for another year, $1.15 million. And it brought me up to a great point. On yesterday's episode of Locked On Blues, I talked a lot about, what is the plan with Doug Armstrong and what is he trying to do for the Blues for this upcoming season? He's still the GM for the next two seasons, so obviously where respect is due, I'm going to trust that he is going to make this team better. I have to believe that, right? But there is a part of me that is thinking to myself, is this something that Steen would have done? Now, I understand that these two guys completely different. I know Steen is now the special assistant to the GM, and he does have stuff to learn. Obviously, Doug Armstrong is somebody I'm going to give him credit. He is a great GM to learn from. But do I think that it's going to be different with Steiner in charge? Absolutely. Here's the thing. Perunovich's extension, and again, nothing against him. I wouldn't have done it. I know that he's really good friends with Jordan Kyrou, and Kyrou is posting all over social media, all excited. And I like that this team, there is close bonds between certain players, which I do like. I just wouldn't have done that, to be honest. But it gets me thinking, in these next two seasons, what is Doug Armstrong trying to accomplish? Does he want this team to get back into the playoffs? Does he want them to not do as well so they can get better draft picks? I don't know. Now, one thing about the St. Louis Blues that I will say is that we're an organization that doesn't tank for picks. And it's not wrong if your organization does, and it's not something that I'm a fan of, but I get why organizations do it. So in my head, I'm like, okay, well, obviously Doug wants to get back to the playoffs, and that is a goal. But here's the thing, and this is where I get a little bit frustrated. As much as I want to get back to the playoffs, I don't want to be a one and done team. And I feel like I have been so used to that for such a long time, being a fan of the Blues, especially as a little kid. I just always remember one and done, and that was us. And I want us to actually have some success in the postseason because, again, I know it's been 5 years since we won a cup, but we do have some of the same players that we did when we won the cup initially. We have one of the best goalies in the league, and I want to get back into that position. So, from my perspective, being a fan, being somebody that, is obviously very invested with the Blues, I feel like Doug Armstrong has something to prove. He knows that his time is up in 2 years here in St. Louis. You know, say what you want about him, but he is the guy that did get us a cup initially 5 years ago. So he, obviously isn't always be respected here in St. Louis, but I feel like he just wants to have that one last statement. I think the transition will be good between the two guys. I do. I know that, last week I was a little too excited about it. I like Alex Steen, and I'm really excited that he's going to be back here in St. Louis. But I do think, though, for these next two seasons, Doug Armstrong has something to prove. And his legacy. I mean, listen, we all know that he was the GM when the Blues won the cup. We all know that he's, 1,000, what was it, wins under him being GM or games, one of the two. The point is, we understand, Doug is a very well respected guy, but I feel like he even knows this too. And his time is coming close to an end. He maybe wants to go out with a bang. And I feel like that is something that I would be okay with. When Steen takes over in 2 seasons from now, you don't want him to be in a position where the Blues have been struggling. You want them to be somewhat successful. The whole thing here isn't, Armstrong over Steiner. It's literally a very simple thing: bettering the St. Louis Blues. That is the one goal that every single person in this organization should have in common. How can we better the St. Louis Blues? How can we get them back to the playoffs? How can we make sure that this team has success? And if that's not how you're thinking, then you need to get a new mentality. Because I promise you this, and I know people say, oh, self sabotage. Why would Doug Armstrong want to sabotage the Blues? Why would anybody want to hurt this organization when they're clearly struggling with executing wins and games that they should be winning? I know that right now it's probably a very weird time being a fan of the Blues. I know I feel like I'm in a weird funk, not just because I do a daily podcast and I talk about the Blues every day, but just because I am trying to understand what their goal is, what their incentive is this offseason. And that's another thing too with Armstrong to Steen is that I feel like Armstrong sometimes takes a little bit too safe of picks or moves or anything you want to call it. I feel like Steiner would be a little bit more open to do something out of the books. That is because, again, nothing against age. It's more about experience. Doug knows that if he's safe, nothing bad, nothing good. Steiner has nothing to lose. I mean, honestly, you have to break walls and go for it. And that's how I expected Doug Armstrong to be, especially these past, you know, two seasons of not being in the playoffs. It's embarrassing. And he has 2 seasons left as GM. And I mean, at this point, what does he have to lose? His replacement's working with him, right? Um, he doesn't have anything to lose. It's not like they're gonna be any worse, right? I mean, I know they could be, but again, at the end of the day, having a bad record doesn't change not being in the playoffs, right? And what I mean by that is this. Obviously, the worse record you have, the better draft pick you have, which I get is a good thing for some of the teams. Like I know San Jose, the Blackhawks, I get that. But that's just not the Blues. So for Doug Armstrong, you were the best worst team. Okay. Improvement from last year. You improved, I believe it was 11 points. You improved from last year. Congratulations. Improvement. The goal for this coming season is simple: how can we make it to the playoffs? And I know that was what they said last year, but last year, Doug played it safe. He didn't make any moves. It was very simple. It was very bland. It was boring. This offseason, and this is what he needs to do, he needs to actually make some moves that are going to shake up the team a little bit. Bring a player in that might be expensive, which means that you have to get rid of some of the other guys. I know it's uncomfortable when you think about, shaking that dynamic up, but clearly what's going on the ice isn't working. And I don't think it takes a scientist, a surgeon, anybody. It doesn't take a genius, okay, to see that and realize that. And that is something last season that I said a lot. I can't pinpoint a specific player. I know it's always, Torrey Krug, and you have Jordan Kyrou. I get that there are certain players that people pinpoint, but what if it's not as simple as that? What if it truly is, do we get rid of Buchnevich? Do we have to extend him? They don't have to. You see, I understand you want the players that you have to find success and to have breakout seasons and grow. The thing is, that's not life and that's not hockey. Sometimes players just don't succeed on certain organizations. And if they have value, you need to get the most out of them. I don't want to babysit these players hoping that they all of a sudden play how they did a couple of seasons ago. I'm sorry, but I don't have time for that. As a fan, I am frustrated because I know that we have some real talent on the Blues. And again, this goes back to even the trade deadline standing pat. Are you telling me that no team in the entire NHL was interested in any of our guys? Now, I have a hard time believing that, and I'm not saying anyone's a liar. I'm not saying um, that they didn't try, but it just seems really hard for me to understand that the Blues couldn't make any move. I mean, you think about the draft this year, right? We have one first rounder, which is 16th overall. That sucks. Okay. It sucks. It really does. And it bothers me and it annoys me because that's an awful pick to have. I know I talked about prospects, but it's awful. And it makes me think, what if Doug Armstrong did something during the trade deadline? And it makes you think and it makes you question, okay, is this setting this team up to fail for this upcoming season? Now, I don't believe that necessarily, but I do think that the transitioning period between, as I said, Armstrong and Steen will be very interesting. And they both have nothing to lose at this point. And that is my main point, that both of these guys have nothing to lose. So break down walls, break barriers, and please do something that can be a little bit exciting because the Blues, and I hate to use the word desperately, but they do desperately need that for this upcoming season. I'm going to talk to you about my friends over at Game Time. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of the Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on Game Time actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. With killer last minute deals, all in prices, views from your seats, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. So this is what I love about Game Time is that you can pick out tickets for any single event. You can see exactly where you're going to sit on Game Time too, which makes it really nice. Because personally, for me, I'm a short person. I'm only 5'2", so I like to be able to see my view. Unfortunately, though, for our Cardinals, because the Miami Marlins came to town and won that series. They won today as well, all within one. But a 4-3 loss to the Marlins today, and then a 9-8 loss last night to the Marlins. Not so good right now for our Cards. But tomorrow, luckily, we do host the Giants. So hopefully with that series, we can get some wins. So you should definitely go to Game Time to get your tickets, St. Louis, because I am telling you, they always have the lowest price and the best seats in the house. So download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL, LOCKEDON NHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. What if Wednesday? So you might have heard what I said. You might have said, Haley, you were foreshadowing, and I definitely was, and it's about Pavel Buchnevich. And before I go any further, I just want to say this. I like him. I think that, he is a good player, and I'm not dissing him, but it does make me think, what about Pavel Buchnevich? And here's the thing. He potentially could be somebody that you could, deal this summer. Now, I know what you're thinking, Haley. What are they going to get out of him? I don't know. I don't have the answers, and I don't know exactly um, what he's going to do. But NHL insider Frank Savarelli had a listed Buchnevich on his trade candidate list for the summer, which makes me think is something going to happen. So here's the thing. With the trade deadline, a lot of NHL insiders, again, nothing is officially confirmed, but I trust Frank. I mean, obviously, he's one of the best in the industry. He had Booch on the list during the trade deadline, and obviously that didn't happen. And here's the thing. I don't know what they're going to do, right? His trade value depends on a lot of things with a 1 year, rental or resign. I don't know what the Blues are going to do, right? But here's the thing. Buchnevich and the Blues have both shown interest in a contract extension, and within the coming months that could happen. But here's the thing. There could be another way around this where Doug Armstrong could maybe try to get some other teams interested. So this past season was 63 points, 27 goals, and 36 assists with 63 points, as I did mention, across 80 games. Not bad season. So again, he does have that value, but I mean, this is insane. Like the fact that there's so much talk about him right now just goes to show there is some speculation and there is some, talk about it. He does have 1 year left of his contract and it's 5.8 million. And here's the thing. We all know Armstrong was interested in signing him, right? But here's the thing. Where is the value, right? Is it going to be a 1 year? What is it going to be, right? Um, Here's the other thing too. I do think this. I think that if he were to stay, right, you would want to sign him for a longer extension than a year. 29 now. I know Armstrong has said, maybe mid 30s. He would finish out his career here in St. Louis. And not a negative, but is he worth that? Now, again, what if the Blues give him let's go say for fun, 5 year extension? Okay, he's here. Would you be upset? Now, personally, I would be indifferent about it. I don't think it's a bad thing. I think he's great on that first line. I love him with Robert Thomas. But at the same time, I am a little curious. What could the Blues actually get out of him? And I think that's where the whole what if Wednesday comes into play. Because I give scenarios based on things that have a what if possibility. So, what if the Blues end up making a trade or something? Could you get a first rounder out of him? Could you get a really good up and coming player? What can you get out of Pavel Buchnevich? And it does make me think. So, I want you to think about that. What if the Blues kept him and extended him? Or what if the Blues were able to trade him? Personally, I do feel like an extension is going to happen just based on how the talks are right now with Armstrong and even Buchnevich himself. But there is always that possibility. And I want Doug, I really do. I want him to explore the what ifs. I think that's a very important thing. I think that he would be making a mistake if not. And here's the thing when on Monday, Armstrong was able to talk to different camps, and he literally said, they've been really good. We're not talking economics right now, but we don't need to, implying that maybe an extension will happen. And I do think right now the organization is heading in a good direction. Obviously, there's been so much going on with the Blues this offseason. He also said, Doug Armstrong, we're going to let them test the market and we'll see see what's there. We haven't closed the doors on anyone. There's a lot going on too besides, obviously Buchnevich, there's Kapanen, there's Sammy Blais. There's a lot of guys, Scandella even. Like there's so much happening. So right now, it's up in the air, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm not saying it's a good thing. But what if the Blues traded him? What kind of value could they get? Could you get a first rounder? And I know I'm going to sound repetitive, but I don't like again that the Blues only have one first round draft pick. And I'm going to talk about why that is. But first, I want to make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel here on Locked On Blues. Click that subscribe button down below if you're watching on YouTube. If you're watching, or I should say listening on any type of device, Spotify, Apple, Sirius, whatever you listen to your podcast, go to YouTube. Make sure to hit that subscribe button. It helps me out a lot. You get to see me every single day. So if you want to have some good blues talk on a daily basis, definitely do that. And on Twitter too at Locked On Blues, I'm always tweeting. Twitter is crazy. I will say that Twitter is insane. Some of the tweets I read are really funny. You're very opinionated, but I do love interacting with you, and I hope that you and I can continue to have this relationship during the off season and maintain it when we get back to season again. It is crazy how fast a pace this will go. And I actually made a list today before I talked to you about trading up because I thought this was really interesting. So I was thinking about, the off season, right? In June, we have the draft. In July, we have free agency, and then we have prospect development camps. In August, we really have heading into the season, all the final adjustments. And then September, we have training camp and preseason. So it's a lot. It's funny. Everyone's like, "Oh, the off season's so quiet." Not for hockey. Hockey has a very long season. I mean, I know that we're not the Panthers or the Oilers, but like think about them. Like they're going to be finishing hockey up this week or early next week, which is insane. And then a couple days later, it's the draft, and then a couple of days after that, it's free agency. So it's a lot of boom, 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 boom. And luckily for the Blues, I feel good about free agency. I feel like we're going to attack, but I want to talk about that draft. We have the 16th overall pick in the first round. Will the Blues trade up? Well, what if I said something different? Do you think that the Blues would be able to get 2 first-round draft picks by the time it's the draft? No. I don't think that's gonna happen. So, now it brings me to, will the Blues trade up? And that is a no. I don't think so. Doug Armstrong has kind of implied that he doesn't plan on doing that. Now, do I think that it's always a possibility? It's always a possibility. I just don't think he's going to. I think that Doug Armstrong and maybe even some of the scouts, they might have a player that they have their eyes on, a player that they think is going to fall back a little bit, a player that they don't think is going to be selected right away. I feel like if there was a player that they had in mind that they did think would be taken sooner, then maybe there would be more rumors speculating against all speculation that the Blues might move up. But right now, they're not one of those teams that anyone is even, saying anything about. I am curious, however, though, and hear me out. Right now in the NHL, um, there's some trades going on today. Capitals, different teams, not us. What if Doug is cooking? And what if Doug Armstrong, being the guy that he is, does make a move before the draft? I feel like for his sake, if he were to move up, it would be really important to be in that top 8 so we can get Sam Dickinson, who is one of the best defensive players in this draft. And I know I say that like a crazy amount, but I really feel like that guy could really change the team on defense. Because, Parayko can only be playing hockey for so long. I don't know, but I do feel like, what if Doug is cooking? And what if he's just not really indicating it? And the Blues are going to be one of those teams that come out of nowhere and all of a sudden, boom, a trade happens. But who would they trade and who would have enough value for a first rounder? Pavel Buchnevich. And you see how my episodes all linked today? Because this has been heavy on my mind. It's not a conspiracy theory, it is a hockey theory. Because what ifs are always possible in hockey land. You truly never know if the Blues, I feel like this past week and a half, there's just been so much going on with this team. Brian Elliott, Scott Perunovich, Alex Steen, a lot's been happening. So again, let me know what you think, and I will talk to you tomorrow. Hopefully, it won't be a hectic day like today because it was nice being able to finally talk about something I had planned rather than a last minute, oh no, this happened. Let's talk about this. All right, I will talk to you tomorrow. And like always, let's go Blues.